If you're like me, then you hate stereotypes. They're a fantastic way to offend people and generally get things wrong, and there are loads that exist with American and British culture. Having visited friends and family in Chicago and New York for a few weeks within the past year, there were a bunch of things I noticed and wanted to talk about. Most of the main stereotypes come from people spreading uninformed opinions or from television and movies, but there were a lot of other interesting differences that you only notice when you visit. Let's start in no particular order with stereotype number 1. Americans are stupid. Actually, before I start, I should premise this by saying that these are my general perceptions about the stereotypes between the two cultures. I'm not going to go through the facts and data about education systems or IQ points. I feel that the Americans are stupid perception that most of the world has about America is almost solely based on geography, and also by Trump, but I'm not going to get into that. The stereotype seems to stem from the perception that Americans are really bad with geography. My general perception, and I don't know how much truth there is behind this, is that the Americans study the United States at school, and very little about any other parts of the world. That doesn't make them stupid, but it's definitely a failure of the US education system which leads to ignorance. When I was talking to strangers in the public in the US, like supermarket cashiers or cab drivers, they would often ask where I was from. I think I said I was from England a couple of times only to get confused responses. I had to start reeling off the list of locations. London, England, Britain, the UK, Europe. Surely you must have heard of one of these. I've seen the videos on YouTube where they ask people on Hollywood Boulevard to locate one country and they can't do it.
Can you name any country on this map?
Oh my gosh. Shouldn't I be taught this in school?
I would hope so.
South America?
That's a continent.
But it's kinda obvious that they cherry pick only the really stupid ones to show in the video. So I was a bit shocked in real life to find out that people didn't immediately know of England. I know it's not really the same, but I can't imagine there's a single adult in the UK who has never heard of America. A very low percentage of US citizens have passports relative to Europeans, but this is kind of understandable. You can experience so many different climates and cities staying inside the United States, so there's much less reason to travel abroad. But I can't deny that travelling the world and experiencing different cultures makes you more worldly, open-minded and intelligent. It's much easier for a Brit to travel to Paris, Amsterdam and countless other vastly different European cities, so I don't think it's fair to label Americans as stupid just because they're less travelled. To sum up point number 1, I don't think Americans are generally stupid, but they do have a disadvantage when it comes to being worldly, and when you consider this stupid American stereotype, you think back to all the times you've met Americans, and since you're from a different place, geography usually comes up in conversation, which is when Americans can seem ignorant. So I get where the stereotype comes from. Another reason why Americans appear stupid is because what is depicted in the media. Basically, when you see these rednecks sharing their dumbass opinion on the news. This can skew perception, but these kinds of white trash equivalents exist everywhere. There's plenty of those types in the UK too, but they just go by different names, like chavs. Americans always seem to say that Brits come off as really smart due to the accent. Likewise, the American accent can come across as really obnoxious, but you have to remember there are many US accents and many British accents. It's only this middle-class London accent that foreigners refer to as a British accent that actually sounds intelligent. In the West Country, you'll find farmer accents.
Right. What did he say?
Said edge is edge, huh? He only chopped him down because he couldn't see the view no more. What's he known about?
What did he say?
He said an edge is an edge. He only chopped it down because it spoiled his view. What's Reaper moaning about?
Even around London, you have working class accents like the Cockney accent, which doesn't sound intelligent at all.
Uncle Harry's asked me to go and work in his pub in Spain, and I said yes.
Oh, you are joking.
No.
In the US, the Midwest accent is a fairly neutral accent, but then there's the transatlantic accent, which they have in Frasier, which is kind of posh.
I'm telling you, Frasier, my allergies are acting up.
Oh, Niles, I think you're exaggerating.
No, really, you have no idea how vivid the experience is.
Minnesota accents come off as really friendly, although they're kind of almost Canadian.
He says, oh, so I get it. So you think I'm some kind of jerk for asking, only you don't use the word jerk.
Then there's the California accent, which can be a bit grating.
I
I got so close to like getting Jai to buy me like a $700 air conditioning unit. I like got the guy to help me. He was freaking out. It was awesome.
Southern accents, especially African American Georgian accents, are like music to my ears. They sound super jazzy.
Boy, the world's one river, and I'm its king. Ain't no place I ain't been.
I think both sides of the pond are quick to forget that there are a lot of accents in both Britain and the US. Stereotype number 2. British people have bad teeth. This one is a myth, but also has a bit of truth behind it. Dental hygiene in the UK, keyword being hygiene, is the best in the world by certain metrics, such as number of decayed teeth, missing teeth, cavities. Brits generally have good dental hygiene. However, I don't know if there's some historical data or reason for Brits having crooked teeth. There's definitely a cultural difference. The US has more of a desire for perfect, straight white teeth, whereas Brits don't care about certain imperfections as long as they're healthy. The way our healthcare works feeds into this too. We have free healthcare at the point of service with the NHS, paid for by our taxes. This doesn't include dental work, but we generally go to the doctors and the dentist to make sure we're healthy. In the US, there's much more of a culture for cosmetic surgery, going to the dentist to look better, or going to the doctors because a TV advert told you about a certain new drug that you definitely don't need. But our healthcare is vastly different, and the culture surrounding that is also different. When I recently visited my British friends who were living in the US, they were telling me of one of their dentist trips. The dentist repaired a chipped tooth that my British friend had had for ages. There was no real need to repair it, aside from for cosmetic reasons. It functioned fine and was barely even noticeable, but the dentist told her that he was going to repair it, rather than ask her if she even wanted it repaired. Since Americans tend to have insurance, I guess there's more inclination to just get the work done. But here in the UK, dentists are expensive, and I personally don't really care about minor cosmetic things enough to pay hundreds of pounds. Children do get free dental care here, so it's pretty common for teens to have braces to correct crooked teeth where it might not have been in previous generations. So overall, there's some truth to that stereotype, but in general it's taken out of proportion. Stereotype number 3, Americans are loud, and in contrast, Brits are grumpy. I think this cultural difference is quite true from my experience. Brits, and especially Londoners, prefer to keep to themselves. For example, on the London Underground, in the morning whilst everyone is commuting, they sit quietly and listen to their music. They read their book, chat quietly to their friend, keep to themselves, and get annoyed by anyone getting in their way or disturbing the peace. People don't really have friendly chats with strangers, but it's not unheard of. I mean, I've definitely struck up conversation with randoms on the train when heading home drunk after a night out. Other UK cities, like Bristol, where I live, tend to be much more friendly too. London has a special kind of leave me alone culture, probably because there are too many people packed into such a small space. In America, I found people aren't afraid to speak very loudly on the phone in public. I was in an elevator in the apartment complex where I was staying, and this woman wearing a yoga outfit was on the phone. It was very quiet in the elevator, it was just me and her in there, so she didn't need to speak loudly, but she was saying, "And I told her, I've paid for these classes, so you can't do that." It transpired that she was kicked out of her yoga class for talking on the phone, which only reinforces my point. You also notice it when you're shopping. You walk into a store and immediately the staff are in your face with, "Hello sir, how are you today? Is there anything I can help you with?" Brits hate this. I think a lot of Americans do too, but for some reason your corporations seem to enforce this overly enthusiastic service industry when most people just want to be left alone. It's okay if you see someone looking lost or confused in your store, but not right when I walk through the door. But more generally, I think there is a real cultural difference there. Americans are more outgoing and loud and sometimes friendly, sometimes obnoxious. Brits are generally more irritable and keep to themselves. Thinking about it, that probably feeds back into the Americans are stupid stereotype. I think in the US, people aren't afraid to speak up and share their opinion, no matter how stupid it might be. There's a bunch of other things I wanted to talk about, but this is already quite a long episode, so I think I'll save it for another day, if this video is popular enough. If you want to see a part 2, you can help make that happen by sharing this around. If it's popular enough, I'll make a part 2 sooner rather than later.